At 5:12 a.m. on October 3rd, 1935, at the Mare Pass on the Eritrea-Abyssinia border, a biting cold air hangs heavy and dry. A relentless northeast wind whips through the dark, rocky gullies. A thin, ground-hugging fog obscures the landscape, enough to blur the forms of men and machines, though not enough to fully mask the rumble of engines. Trucks of the Italian I Corps, their headlights dimmed, grind forward into the darkness. Their tires chew gravel into dust, creating a steady rhythm like a somber drumline. At that exact moment, 5:12 a.m. by Italian clocks, Benito Mussolini stands over a map in the Palazzo Venezia in Rome. The air in the room is thick with tobacco smoke and the smell of ink. He hasn't slept. His eyes are fixed on the red boundary lines, until the rivers on the map seem to pulse like veins in his own body. Outside, Rome is still cloaked in night, but within his mind, a new sun has risen, a vision of a new Roman Empire. He speaks in terse, clipped sentences, like issuing battlefield orders. Abyssinia will become Italian land. The Red Sea will become our lake. The Mediterranean will become Mare Nostrum, our sea. The generals surrounding him remain silent and still. They understand that this is not a speech. It is a declaration of war, a campaign order. At the Mare Pass, Marshal Badoglio gives a command to cross the border. Engineers swiftly cut a rough track, laying timber bridges across dry ravines and unspooling barbed wire by hand to secure their advance. Shallow trenches, about 5 to 6 feet deep, enough to conceal a standing man, have already been dug. Men reinforce the walls with stones to prevent collapse. Here, these are not referred to as mere trenches, but rather as a step into history. Behind the infantry, field guns, Cannoni de 75, 27 Modelo 06, are towed by trucks. Their 75mm barrels are coated in red dust. Crews meticulously test the breech blocks and elevation screws. With trained hands and hot ammunition, they could potentially achieve a maximum range of about 6,800 meters and a maximum rate of fire of about 15 rounds per minute. To the gunners, that number is a promise of power. To the Ethiopians beyond the ridge, it is a new and terrifying kind of thunder. In the infantry line, Breda Modelo 37 heavy machine guns stand ready on their tripods. They fire 8 by 59mm RB rounds, with a theoretical cyclic rate of around 460 rounds per minute. However, the practical rate is closer to 200 revolutions per minute, due to the need to manually feed and oil the 24-round strips. They have a maximum range of 5,200 to 5,400 meters, with an effective range near 1,000. A gunner wipes the barrel of his weapon with an oily rag. He isn't thinking of Rome or Caesar, but instead focuses on a feel of the warm stock in his palm, the anticipated kick of the spring, and the way sand can jam the feed. Mussolini desires this war to appear both ancient and noble. Straight advances, flags waving in the sun, parades in conquered squares. He still feels the sting of Adwa, the 1896 defeat, where thousands of Italians died and many were captured. He speaks of it as someone else's failure, yet it haunts him. That afternoon, loudspeakers blare across Rome, filling the piazzas with his voice. Crowds pack the squares. Italian tricolors hang from every window. Mussolini steps onto balcony and delivers his message not in flowing sentences, but in sharp, decisive bursts. We march into Abyssinia to open the road of destiny. The crowd erupts in a roar that travels north and then south toward Africa, toward the men drinking from their canteens in the dust. Across the border, Ethiopian scouts spot the telltale plumes of dust from the advancing vehicles. No airplanes or cameras are needed, only sharp eyes and keen ears. They race back to their villages and blow horn whistles, a sound long, high, and piercing. Elders raise their spears. Young men load cartridges into old rifles. Some are using leftover Remingtons, with a useful range under 400 meters, according to some accounts. They know the name of the man sending the trucks. They have heard it on Italian radio, his voice metallic and distant. Night falls on October 4th. Italian campfires are carefully screened with tin to prevent reconnaissance aircraft from spotting the glow. A sergeant opens a letter from Naples. The handwriting is slanted and familiar. The paper carries a faint scent of perfume. His wife writes, "Don't stand up before dawn. Wear the wool scarf. Your boy keeps asking when you will return." He folds a letter, slips it into his inner pocket, and signals his squad to check their ammunition strips. 24 rounds per strip, dozens of strips per box. He whispers, "At first light, fire only when you see them. Ammo isn't endless." In Rome, Mussolini reads a different letter, a logistics brief. It details that 140,000 troops, around 3,000 machine guns, and 500 artillery pieces have been shipped into East Africa. The numbers please him. He loves numbers that gleam like metals. They reinforce his belief that history can be measured and commanded. Before dawn, Caproni and Savoy Marchetti bombers drone overhead. Bombs explode in the ravines where Ethiopian troops are massing. The blasts echo against the stone, and black smoke streaks the wind. The Italians note that the way is open. The Ethiopians, on the other hand, believe that the sky has fallen. On the ground, Italian companies advance in layered columns, with machine gun and mortar teams strategically spaced for a crossfire along likely attack routes. The first crest rises with the cold air. Everything still has a semblance of order. Everyone knows they are about to encounter something living, but no one knows how fiercely it will resist. At 9:40 a.m. on March 31st, 1936, on the Mechu Plateau, the sun is brutal and the soil is cracked. The grass is burned yellow. At an altitude of more than 2,500 meters, lungs struggle to draw breath. Gun smoke hangs in the thin air. War here bears no resemblance to parade. It is more like a storm of stone. Badoglio unleashes his artillery in a wide belt of destruction. The fire density increases minute by minute. Each 75mm gun fires 6 to 8 rounds per minute in the first half hour, then slows to prevent the barrels from warping. Some crews swap out the tubes in the field, according to some reports. On the flanks, 47 30-seconds mod. 35 guns are concealed behind low berms. These 47mm guns, firing at about 12 to 14 rounds per minute, with a practical range of around 2,000 meters, were designed for anti-tank warfare, but are now used to fling fragmentation shells into the infantry, raking the ravines. Their muzzle flash is a quick, white blink. On the Ethiopian line, Haile Selassie stakes his last hope. His army is larger, but its weapons are mismatched. A few old field guns, a patchwork of rifles, and a sea of men armed with spears. He knows that Italy possesses aircraft, poison gas, and heavy guns, yet he still brings his forces into the open ground. He wants a decisive pitched battle to salvage honor before the war descends into scattered guerrilla fighting in the valleys. At 10:05 a.m., Ethiopian formations surge down the slope. They shout and drum thud like heartbeats. They fire from the hip, but the bullets drift high. The distance is still too great. Older rifles lose their power. The Italians wait, holding their fire. Then the order rings out. Fuoco! Fire! Breda 37s chatter, their 8mm bullets tearing through the air and cutting the grass into neat lines. With a practical rate of nearly 200 revolutions per minute per gun, 4 guns in platoon can create a wall of lead. Ethiopians slam into that wall. Men fall, and others step over them without pausing. They rely on sheer numbers and courage. The 75 scream overhead. Shells explode, leaving craters half a meter deep, and shrapnel skates sideways. The hillside becomes a landscape of torn earth and bodies. Lines collapse into knots of blind chaos. Dust thickens until the gunners can only see moving shadows. An Italian private, Carlo, a fictional name, crawls in a shallow scrape. He hears bullets hissing like bees. He presses a hand to his chest. The letter from Naples is still there. He doesn't dare to check it. A comrade beside him screams, struck by a fragment buried in his thigh. The squad drags him into a crater and ties a tourniquet with a belt. It is a deeply human moment that overshadows the grand imperial ambition. Here, New Rome is just a hollow phrase with no meaning. By noon, the wind shifts and smoke blows into the faces of the Ethiopian troops. Italian planes bomb the retreat routes. There are reports that mustard gas is being used in the campaign. Ethiopian troops have no masks. Many choke, their eyes burned, their skin blistering. Casualty ratios skyrocket. Ethiopian dead and wounded across the final months number in the tens of thousands overall, according to some estimates, while Italian losses are far lower in the thousands. Carlo doesn't see ratios. He sees one Ethiopian man collapse 20 meters away, still gripping a spear. At 2:20 p.m., the Ethiopian line begins to break. Retreating units lose contact with one another. Mountain tracks become clogged with men and animals. Orders to take prisoners are lost amidst small, brutal slaughters. In Rome, newspapers scream, "Civilization triumphs." Mussolini stands by the radio, collecting names and numbers. He imagines pillars rising in Addis Ababa. Yet Badoglio's cable contains a blunt line. Enemy fights hard. Terrain difficult. Our troops exhausted. Mussolini reads it and discards it, choosing to focus only on what supports the story he needs to tell. On May 5, 1936, Addis Ababa falls. Mussolini announces annexation and declares Italian East Africa. Italians redraw maps, borders stretching south in bright ink. He calls it the first brick of the new empire. But in Ethiopian villages, families place black and white photos of the dead on rough tables. No ceremonies are held, only silence and an oath. Fighters slip into the mountains. They ambush supply lines. They snipe from gullies. The victory is broad at the surface, but infected underneath. An empire never lies flat the way it does on paper. The second crest ends in dust, blood, and broken order. But Mussolini's ambition does not pause. On the wall of his office, the map remains open, and the red arrows still have room to grow. At 4:30 a.m. on October 28, 1940, in the Pindus Mountains on the Albania-Greece frontier, snow rain slaps sideways. The trails are slick, jagged with limestone. Black pines shiver in the wind. The Alpini Giulia division crosses the line in single file, hauling light guns and mortars uphill, trying to maintain silence. In Rome, Mussolini believed the strike will prove Italy equal to Germany. He refuses to be a mere shadow. He envisions Roman roads traversing the Balkans, a crescent-shaped empire encircling the Mediterranean. He tells his generals, "Greece is a small stone. We kick once and it shatters." The phrase spreads through camps. Some officers laugh without sound. They have seen these mountains. The opening push crawls forward in the atrocious weather. Trucks skid into ravines. 75mm shells get wet and must be wiped dry one by one. Alpini fingers go numb as they fumble with the Carcano 6. 5mm clips. They scrape shallow shelters into the frozen rock, about a meter deep, and line them with pine branches. At night, the assembly whistle cuts short and hard through the storm, sounding like a lost bird. At 10:15 a.m. on November 1st, as Giulia squeezes through a defile, Greek troops counterattack from higher slopes. They are fewer in number at first, but the ground favors them. They fire downhill, bullets falling like hail. The Italians try to spread out, but the trail is narrow, fitting only 2 men abreast. Artillery calculations fail in the wide-out conditions. 47-32 guns are dragged up, but trees and boulders obstruct their arcs of fire. Their 47mm rounds explode against the hillside, spraying dirt back into the crews. The third crest begins with a stumble. The Italians do not break through. They are cut into isolated pockets, each fighting alone without signals. By November 3rd, Greek commander Davakis tightens a noose, using a handful of guns to strike at the narrow points of movement. After 2 brutal weeks, about 5,000 men of Giulia are killed, wounded, or missing. The number is a direct slap to Mussolini's grandiose speeches. An Alpini, Pietro, a fictional character, finds a small photograph in the coat of a dead friend, a girl by a bicycle in Turin, her hair wrapped in a scarf. Pietro pockets it, intending to return home. He looks at the snow-filled valley and thinks, what empire asks men to freeze for a sentence? He does not say it aloud. He only tightens his laces and helps lift the body onto a stretcher. In April 1941, Germany invades Greece to rescue its failing ally. Italy wins only under the shadow of German power. The map arrows still extend, but they are no longer Italian arrows. Mussolini understands this but refuses to admit it, preferring to live in a gilded illusion. Then the war turns decisively. In 1943, Allied forces land in Sicily. Italy has no reserves, no fuel, no air cover, and no morale. Its North African armies have already been bled dry. Fascist authority crumbles. The Grand Council votes him down. On July 25, 1943, Mussolini is arrested, driven away in a fake ambulance, a prisoner too stunned to walk. Final Italian reports record-worsening casualty rates. In Sicily, entire regiments lose 30 to 40% of their men in days, according to some reports. This is not due to cowardice, but to the lack of planes, guns, tanks, and to an imperial dream built on sand, lacking the industrial backbone to support it. Italy had a vision of New Rome. The reality was New Rome without gasoline. After the war, maps changed color again. Italian East Africa is erased. Albania, Greece, Libya, and more slip away. The empire Mussolini built in 8 years collapses in a few seasons. The Mediterranean is not Mare Nostrum. It becomes the shipping lane of the victors. The legacy is not territory, but a strategic warning. Mussolini demonstrates that propaganda can electrify crowds but cannot lower mountains, extend firing ranges, or turn logistics into miracles. The doctrine of empire by willpower alone dies in the trenches. Italian memory splits. Some remember flags in Addis Ababa. Others remember the Pindus snow. Some remember Breda guns jamming in the sand. 75mm barrels glowing from sustained fire. Others remember letters never sent. Ethiopian and Greek memory hardens into resistance against the power claiming immortality. In villages and mountain stories, Machu and Pindus remain places where a new Rome was pushed back by rock, winter, and the refusal to vanish. Mussolini wanted to enter history as Augustus. He ends as a cautionary footnote. Yet that footnote still glows in textbooks. When a state chases an imperial mirage and ignores real capacity and the cost in lives, no trench is deep enough to hold a collapse.